Welcome back to the MIKO Suit Supplies Figure Suit Bottom Sew Along. Today we are going to apply elastic to the waistband and then completely finish the bottoms. Let's get started. So before you start applying your elastic, you're going to want to cut your front V and your back V about 3/8 of an inch open. So here I have the front V cut right down the middle, and I'll show you how I cut the back V. Just fold it over so that you get it right at the peak, and then cut 3/8 of an inch open. Of course, you can be more precise than I am. I just eyeball it. It's about 3/8 of an inch. Now to apply the elastic, we're going to start at 1V and then fold the left hand side over, and then again I'm using the apply as you sew method, and as I sew I'm going to pull the elastic 15 to 20% greater than the elastic's resting state again. So let's get started with the elastic. So again, fold over that left hand side, align this edge with the other side of your V, so with the right side of the V, about right here, and allow about 1.5 to 2 inches of elastic to overhang past the V. Oh, if you can see that, it's a little bit longer than the V. Let's get that under the presser foot. Okay. So my zigzag settings are 4 millimeters wide and about 3.5 to 4 millimeters long. So I'll just go to 3.5 for now. And as I zigzag, I want to try to catch from the middle to that edge, but not off the edge. Getting close to the second V, fold that other side down so you don't catch it with any stitches, and then continue zigzagging. I don't stretch the elastic in the last inch of the zigzag. I just leave it flat. Once you hit that V, anchor to back stitch, and you're done with one side. Again, we're going to allow about 1.5 to 2 inches to overhang past the V. Okay. And repeat that for the other side. So fold the left side over, align your elastic, allowing that overhang, and get to stitching. Alright, so the last step before we start top stitching the elastic, we are going to pull the two overhanging pieces of elastic up until it forms a V. Another cue that I like to look for is that this cut that you made should turn into a straight line to get into the right peak. Just like that. From the other side, this is what it looks like. Okay, so then pin that in place. And we're going to straight stitch through that intersection. About 1 or 2 passes of straight stitching. Trim off your thread tails and also trim off that extra elastic. And then repeat that step for the other side. So where is the other side? Oops, over here. Again, hold your piece up like this. Flatten out your V-cut until you get your elastic overhanging pieces to form a peak. And then straight stitch through the intersection. Okay, so this is what it looks like without the elastic overturned. As you can see, there's the elastic is stretched throughout the hips, throughout the front of the bikini, but left completely flat in the butt area. So the final step before finishing it completely is to turn your elastic over and then zigzag stitch to secure. Again, I always start at the hip seams and with the leg holes. So turn it over and let's get this in the machine. So for the zigzag top stitching, which I'm really stitching on the underside of the suit, but the top stitching settings are different from the settings that you use to apply the elastic. So what I use is 3 millimeters in width and about 3 to 3.5 millimeters in length. And for now, I'm just going to keep it at 3.5 millimeters in length. So let's flip all of this over. And another thing, let's see if it can get a little more focused. Another thing I want you to note is that whenever you zigzag this elastic, you want to make sure that your elastic or that your zigzag is catching this free edge. So you want to zigzag as close to that free edge as possible. What some people do is have a zig stitch on and a zig stitch off the elastic. I think either way is acceptable, but I usually just keep both the zig and the zag on the elastic, but just as close to that outer or that free edge as possible. The way I do that is I align the free edge with the left hand side of my presser foot, and it gets it pretty close. Another thing, if your machine has this feature, you can move your needle a little left, but I don't do that. I just keep it in its center position and then zigzag through. So let's get started on zigzagging. All right, and as you zigzag, when we applied the elastic, we stretched it 15 to 20% greater than the elastic resting state. As you do the zigzag top stitch, you're going to want to re-stretch the elastic again so that you don't sew down any of these wrinkles. So re-stretch that elastic again, and also slightly pull the unsewn side radially away from your stitch and from your needle. So this is what it looks like unpulled. Pull the elastic and then slightly pull this side over. So both leg holes are now finished, and before we move on to finishing the waistband elastic, I wanted to talk you through stretching this leg hole elastic. So remember when we did not stretch across the butt area? Whenever you're top stitching down your elastic, you do not have to stretch again. So in this case, as you're stitching this down with your zigzag, you just want to make sure that you're slightly pulling your workpiece to the left so that it creates this nice folded edge as you stitch down. Then whenever you get up to this crook again, wherever we had initially stretched the elastic, that's where you want to re-stretch again, but still maintain some tension away from your stitch lines. So let's move on to finishing the waistband elastic. So we're in one of the final steps, and that is to finish the waistband elastic. Just as we did before with the leg holes, we're going to re-stretch the elastic and slightly pull the rest of the workpiece away from the stitching, so that you can create a nice fold along the elastic. If your machine has the ability to, I don't know if you can see this, but if your machine has the ability to keep the needle in the down position once you take your foot off of the pedal, that would be best, because we're going to use that feature whenever pivoting over this peak. So as usual, start with your hip seam. Make sure to pull that elastic so that everything stretches out, and then zigzag stitch with a 3 millimeter wide and about 3.5 millimeter long zigzag. We're getting close to the first peak. Zigzag until you hit that center of the peak. Lift your foot, pivot your workpiece so that you can realign that angle, and then keep on zigzagging. And that's it. You are done with 99.9% of your sewing of your figure suit bottoms. The last thing to do is add holsters, and where you want to add your holster, or basically wherever your back strap clips in, is right inside the crook of where your back, the main body, transitions to the hip straps. So you can see this curve right here. You want to add your holster, whether you hand stitch in something like this clear S-hook, whether you hand stitch in the S-hook right inside that crook, or what I do is create loops out of covered elastic like this, and then just stitch it in along the top waist of that of your figure suit bottom. But just make sure that it's inside of this crook like so. The way that I do it, I also put these S hooks or G hooks, whatever you want to call them, swim hooks, S hooks, plastic stuff. I put that on the back strap of the figure suit top, and so it hooks right into the bottoms. One final thing that I'd like to note is that I do keep the elastic on my front and back peak exposed. It's really a matter of preference how you treat this. I personally don't mind having it exposed, but if you do mind, there is a tutorial out there that shows how you can cover it up but still maintain the sharp V. So I'll link that in the description of this video. That's it for part 2. How'd you do? Let me know in the comments below, and make sure to subscribe to the MIKO Suit Supplies YouTube channel in order to stay up to date on when part 3 comes out. In part 3, I'll demonstrate how to wear the bottoms and a simple pattern hack for achieving a cheekier cut. See you soon!